You remember back in 2023, it feels like ages ago, but it was only 2 years back. Nigeria and ECOWAS were threatening to send troops into Niger Republic to restore democracy. Well, a lot has happened since then, and it's happening right here to Nigeria's own democracy. The very thing the guys running Nigeria wanted to defend in Niger is now under serious threat in their own backyard as we speak. Let me paint a picture for you. On October 13th, 2025, something incredible happened in Enugu State. It's a state in southeast Nigeria. The governor, Mr. Peter Mba, walked into a packed stadium. He had his predecessor with him, every single commissioner, all 17 local government chairmen, and more than 80% of the state political bigwigs. They were all there for one reason, to announce they were dumping the opposition party, the People's Democratic Party, and joining the ruling APC. And Enugu wasn't a one-off thing. It was just the latest domino to fall. Because over the last 2 years, we have seen a political shift so fast, so coordinated, it's making people ask a really uncomfortable question. Are we watching our democracy just shrink? Governors are jumping ship. Senators are switching sides in the middle of the night. The ruling APC now has a 2/3 majority in the Senate. That's the magic number they need to change even the Constitution itself. Meanwhile, what's happening to the opposition? They are falling apart from the inside, ripped up by these strange leadership fights and endless court cases that seem designed to paralyze them. And it gets deeper. Journalists trying to investigate corruption, they are getting arrested under cybercrime laws. Activists are being charged for posts on social media. Now, the official numbers, they say the economy is growing. The World Bank is cheering Nigeria on. But at the same time, almost half the country has fallen into poverty. Food prices up about 500% since 2019. Young people can't find jobs, but the reforms keep coming, getting applause from international institutions while people here go hungry. Now, with the 2027 election on the horizon, think about this. The APC controls the Electoral Commission because they just appointed a new chairman to lead the commission. And the security agencies, the courts, and now, through all these defections, pretty much every level of government, the ruling party now controls it. The opposition is in total disarray. The deck looks completely stacked against them. So in this episode, we are going deep. We are going to break down how Nigeria is sliding towards a one-party system, how the opposition was systematically destroyed from the inside out, and why the real threats to this country aren't the critics online, but the outside forces taking our resources and stirring up division. We are asking the question a lot of Nigerians are whispering, but are afraid to say out loud. Is Nigeria becoming a one-party state? And if it is, who is benefiting and what happens next? So, how does a party gain 15 Senate seats in just 28 months without winning it through an election? It's simple. They didn't have to campaign. They just had to wait for the opposition to come to them. One governor, one senator, one state at a time. That scene in Enugu with Governor Peter Mba in October 2025, it was pure political theater, all for show. Thousands of people gathered, an entire state leadership crossing over in one go. But this wasn't random. It was the final move in a game that started the minute President Bola Tinubu took office back in 2023. Back then, the APC had just 59 out of 109 seats in the Senate. That's a simple majority, sure, but it's nowhere near the 2/3 super majority you need to do the big stuff like changing the constitution. Fast forward to October 2025. Through this relentless campaign of defections, the APC now has 74 Senate seats. They finally hit that critical to third mark. The PDP, which used to be the biggest party in the country, saw its Senate numbers collapse from 36 seats down to just 27. That's a 25% loss of their power in the legislature. The math is brutal. The APC can now amend the constitution, approve a state of emergency, even impeach officials, all without needing a single opposition vote. Now, the story with the governors is even crazier, because in April 2025, Delta State Governor Sheriff Oboroweri and his predecessor Ifeanyi Okowa, the same guy who was vice president to the opposition People Democratic Party in the last presidential election, led the entire state PDP structure over to the APC. They said they needed to align with the federal development priorities. In June 2025, Governor Umar Eno of Akwa Ibom did the same thing, and he brought 10 members of the National Assembly with him. Then came Peter Mba in Enugu with his predecessor Ifeanyi Ugwuanyi and all his commissioners, all 17 local government chairs, and over 80% of the PDP leadership in the state. And just recently, on October 15th, 2025, the governor of Bayelsa State, Dore Diri, announced he was quitting the PDP, taking the state assembly speaker and 23 lawmakers with him. He hasn't said where he's going as of right now, but everyone's betting is the APC. The excuses they give are always the same. They talk about connecting to the center, aligning with President Tinubu's renewed hope agenda, or escaping the PDP internal crisis. What they don't talk about is the threat that is not being said out loud. Former Vice President Atiku Abubakar put it bluntly. He said the Tinubu-led APC is using state institutions, including anti-corruption agencies, to intimidate and basically force opposition leaders to join their party. On social media, regular Nigerians aren't buying the official story. Senator Henry Siraki Dixon put it this way: everyone is rushing to the ruling party, and we don't even know what's chasing them there or what they are chasing. A civil society group, Yaga Africa, pointed out that this wave of defections is destroying people's trust in politics and making the whole party system a joke. So when politicians just switch teams without any real reason, it just makes everyone more cynical and kills accountability. Now, here is the legal loophole that is letting all this happen. Section 68 of the Constitution says lawmakers can't switch parties without losing their seats, unless the party they are leaving has internal divisions. The courts have been incredibly flexible with this rule, often accepting even the vaguest claims of a party crisis as a good enough reason. This has opened the floodgates for defections with basically zero legal consequences. The former APC national chairman, Abdullahi Ganduje, has reportedly said he likes the idea of a one-party system, and even President Tinubu is allegedly said to feel the same way. Now, there are reports that Ganduje allegedly said that if a one-party state is a blessing for Nigeria, then let it happen, adding that too many cooks spoil the soup, and too many parties spoil governance. Now, civil society groups are firing back. The African Democratic Congress called the governors political apostates who betrayed their own people to join a gang up against Nigerians. They said they are not worried because the 2027 election will be a fight between the people and the party that has thrown most of them into poverty. But the defections are only half the story. They don't explain how the opposition fell apart so completely and so fast. Something else was going on behind the scenes. Something that looked less like bad luck and more like sabotage. So what if the real threat to Nigeria's opposition isn't the ruling party at all? What if it's the people already sitting in their own meetings, steering every decision towards total chaos? The collapse of the Labour Party is the clearest example. This is the party that won 6 million votes in the 2023 election with Peter Obi. It was a real opposition force that got millions of young Nigerians excited. But within 2 years, it has shattered into different factions. You have Julius Abure, Nenadi Usman, and Lamidi Apapa all claiming to be the real party chairman at one time. This three-way fight has paralyzed the party with different orders, separate meetings, and legal battles that are just draining all their money and credibility. The PDP has its own crisis, and it centers on one man, Nyesom Wike. He's the former governor of Rivers State, who is now a minister in President Tinubu's APC government. But technically, he's still a PDP member. It's a massive conflict of interest, and it has split the PDP into warring camps. A political analyst, Olalekan Ige, told BBC Pidgin that with Wike being in both PDP and Tinubu's cabinet, people are speculating that the PDP has just become an extension of the APC. Wike himself added fuel to that fire. When he commented on the defections, he basically said the same people who accused him of wrecking the party are now the ones running over to the APC. And he is probably right. So, a PDP elder, Bode George, revealed that Governor Mba of Enugu was apparently mad at the party because his candidate for a national position wasn't picked. And when he didn't get what he wanted, he just defected. George also suggested that a lot of these defections might be looking for cover from EFCC investigations. He said that since the APC leadership has hinted that joining their party gives you a fresh start, politicians worried about being investigated are flocking to them. It follows a pattern, almost like a playbook. First, a manufactured internal fight, then an emergency meeting, then a court case. The party gets paralyzed by factions, and then boom, mass defections to the APC. The Policy and Legacy Advocacy Center noted that even opposition party leaders themselves are rumored to be making deals with the ruling party, which is just gutting them from the inside. And the courts have failed to step in and resolve this fight quickly, which just lets the problems get even worse. On the streets and online, people are getting fed up. One viral post said every politician is rushing to the ruling party, and we don't know what is chasing them or what they are chasing. Another person said it feels like the Abacha era all over again, with this fear of a one-party state gripping the country. Now, civil society voices are warning that this whole thing looks coordinated, not accidental. The idea of spies inside the opposition might sound like a conspiracy theory, but the patterns are just too consistent. Why do these crises always end up benefiting the same party? Why do the courts never seem to resolve them in time? And why does every fight end in a defection instead of a handshake? The answer might be simple than it looks, because when you control the state, the anti-corruption agencies, the security forces, the judiciary, you can create a situation where being in the opposition is just impossible. And while the opposition politicians, we are busy fighting each other in boardrooms and in the courtrooms, another weapon was being used. This one wasn't aimed at party leaders, but at the journalists and the activists trying to tell everyone what was really going on. Now, on May 1st, 2024, the World Press Freedom Day of all days, a 26-year-old Nigerian journalist was arrested. He was blindfolded and disappeared into police custody. His crime: publishing a report about government money being misappropriated. He was held for 9 days without being charged, without a lawyer, without any answers. His name is Daniel Ojukwu. He's an investigative journalist with the Foundation for Investigative Journalism, or you can call them FIJ. The authorities, specifically the National Cybercrime Unit, arrested him over a story he published way back in November 2023. That story alleged that a top presidential aide had moved about 147 million naira. Now, this was public money meant for building schools, but Ojukwu's report said it ended up in a private restaurant bank account. So, for 2 full days, 48 hours, he was just gone, like disappeared. And you have to remember, the Constitution here says a suspect has to be charged within that time frame. He wasn't. He was held for 9 days, moved between different detention spots, and they wouldn't even let him see his lawyer. Now, the police said the arrest was legal, that it fell under Nigeria's cybercrime law. They claimed his report was false information. And that law is the key to all of this. Human Rights Watch has looked at Nigeria's cybercrime law and said it basically turns a whole range of normal everyday online activity into a criminal offense. The Committee to Protect Journalists, they've tracked at least 25 journalists who have been prosecuted under this same law since it first came out in 2015. And the arrests are still happening. This is even after they amended the law in 2024, a change that was supposed to give the press more protection. The stories are chilling. Take Segun Olatunji. He's the former editor of an online paper called First News. On March 15, 2024, soldiers just showed up at his home. He was blindfolded, flown to Abuja on a military plane, and held by the Defense Intelligence Agency. Olatunji says he was mistreated, even chained up, held without any contact with the outside world for days before press freedom groups managed to locate him. And his supposed crime, publishing stories about security officials that they claim have violated the Cybercrime Act. Then there is Omoyele Sowore. Most people know him, publisher of Sahara Reporters, a well-known activist. He was arrested back in January this year, 2025, and hit with 17 charges under the Cybercrime Act. And what did he do? He referred to Nigeria's Inspector General of Police as an illegal IGP on his verified X account. That's it. The police turned around and claimed that was an intentional message, one aimed at causing a breakdown of law and order. It all comes down to one part of the law, Section 24. That's the weapon they use. It criminalizes any message sent with the intent of causing a breakdown of law and order, or posing a threat to life. But the language is so vague, and that seems to be on purpose. It lets the authorities go after almost any critical speech just by branding it a threat to national security. The Policy and Legal Advocacy Center has been tracking this. They said the Cybercrime Act was originally supposed to protect people from online threats, but it has been twisted again and again to shut down freedom of speech and target anyone who criticizes the government. And look, it's not just about arresting individuals. The government has also been slowing down the internet, especially during political protests, because back in August 2024, during the End Bad Governance protest, investigative reports showed that internet speed were being throttled all across the country. The goal was clearly to stop information from spreading. A group of over 50 civil society organizations came out and slammed this. They called it the weaponization of internet disruptions and a flat-out violation of our constitutional rights. Now, if you look at Nigeria's press freedom ranking, it's been all over the place. In 2019, the country ranked 120th out of 180 countries. By 2023, it dropped to 123rd, but then it improved slightly to 112th in 2024, according to the World Press Freedom Index. But regardless of what the numbers say on any given year, media right groups on the ground here are consistent. They describe Nigeria as one of West Africa's most dangerous and difficult countries for journalists. They say this law has created a climate of fear. Journalists are now genuinely scared to report on corruption, on the security agencies, on government officials, because they are afraid of being arrested. So it leaves you with some big questions. If the press is silenced, who is left to hold power accountable? If people can't speak freely online without the threat of being arrested, is it really a democracy? So you have got journalists being silenced, you have opposition parties collapsing, and you have defections changing the entire political map. But there is another contradiction playing out here, one that is hitting every single Nigerian family right where they live. The country's economy is officially growing, but the people are getting poorer every single day. So here is the paradox. Nigeria's GDP grew by 3.9% in 2025. Our foreign reserves hit about $42 billion. The World Bank is celebrating the country's positive economic momentum. And yet, in that same year, about 13 million more Nigerians fell below the poverty line. How does that even happen? How does this work? The numbers are just baffling. The World Bank reports steady economic growth, reserves over $42 billion, a current account surplus of 6.1% of the GDP, and public debt is actually projected to go down for the first time in a decade. On paper, these are real improvements, but the same World Bank report warns that these big picture gains haven't translated into any real improvement in the lives of the ordinary Nigerians. A lot of households are still facing serious hardship. While the main inflation rate has started to come down from its peak of nearly 35% in December 2024, food inflation is still through the roofs at around 40 to 43%. Poor families who spend up to 70% of their money on food have seen the price of a basic basket of food go up 5 times between 2019 and 2024. Nearly half of Nigeria's 230 million people, we are talking about 110 to 115 million, and some figures even put it at about 135 million people are living in poverty. That makes Nigeria home to one of the largest populations of poor people in the world. On the street is brutal. A 2024 survey from Afrobarometer found that 86% of young Nigerians say the country's economy is bad or very bad. 72% say the same thing about their own personal living conditions. A massive 91% believe the country is headed in the wrong direction. The survey also found that 23% of young people are unemployed and actively looking for a job. They say the biggest barriers are a lack of experience, not having the right training, or just being unwilling to do certain jobs. The official numbers on this are a mess. The government is claiming that youth unemployment dropped from 53.4% in late 2020 to just 6.5% in mid-2024. But that's because they changed how they calculate unemployment, and it's highly contested. Experts say that older figure of 53.4% is a lot closer to reality. A recent report to the House of Representatives said that nearly 80 million young Nigerians are unemployed. That's a staggering crisis of wasted potential in one of Africa's biggest economy and most populous country. It's no surprise that 6 out of every 10 young Nigerians say they have thought about leaving the country, mostly to find a job or escape the hardship. The numbers of young people who are given a lot of thought to leaving has tripled since 2017, from 12% to 37%. This isn't just a brain drain. It's Nigeria's future walking out the door. The role of the IMF and the World Bank in all of this is controversial. The removal of the fuel subsidy and the devaluation of the naira back in May 2023 were seen by many as being pushed by these international institutions. Human rights lawyer Femi Falana says they pressured Nigeria into these reforms, even though there were no formal conditions attached to Nigeria's COVID loan in 2020. The policy advice from these bodies carries a lot of weight. Now, PwC warned that in 2025, consumers will be dealing with their incomes shrinking, more poverty, and not enough safety net. So who's actually benefiting from all of this? Investors, international lenders, people in the oil industry. Even the World Bank's own country director admitted that a stable economy on paper isn't enough. He said the real test is how these reforms improve the daily lives of Nigerians, especially the poor. So far, the test is failing. GDP per capita dropped 25% from over $2,100 in 2022 to just over $1,600 in 2023. That shows you just how much population growth and the naira devaluation have crushed people's ability to buy anything in Nigeria of 2025. With the economy getting worse and the opposition crumbling, Nigerians are looking ahead to 2027 with just one question. Will the next election even offer a real choice, or is the result already a done deal? They say elections are won by the people who count the votes. And in Nigeria right now, the ruling party controls who counts, who supervises, who enforces the rules, and more who even gets to run. The change in leadership at INEC is a big red flag. Mahmood Yakubu, who was the INEC chairman from 2015 to October 2025, has left after his 2 terms were up. His time in charge was full of controversy. He brought in new technology like the Beaver system and the IREF portal, but the 2023 elections were widely seen as a mess, lacking credibility. Nigerian election observers said the 2023 polls were messed up by INEC's failure to follow its own rules, especially on uploading results to the IREF portal like they were supposed to. On October 10, 2025, President Tinubu nominated a new guy, Professor Josh Amupitan, a 58-year-old law professor from Kogi State. The National Council of State gave it a unanimous thumbs up, and his name was sent to the Senate for confirmation. That's the same Senate where the APC has a 2/3 majority. The civil society situation room has wondered about this for a while. They said the process for appointing INEC leaders has been hit with claims of partisanship, nepotism, and a lack of transparency. This has led to people getting the job who are seen as biased or just incompetent, which further damages the credibility of our elections. But it's not just INEC. This institutional capture goes all the way to the security agencies. The police and the military are still controlled by the executive, and there are documented cases of them acting in a partisan way. The judiciary has been criticized for being too slow to handle election disputes, while at the same time being very quick to approve all these defections. The EFCC has been accused of selectively going after opposition politicians, while people in the ruling party seem to get a pass. The opposition is in a terrible state. Both the PDP and the Labour Party are paralyzed by their internal fight and can't even begin to mount a proper campaign for 2027. There was an attempt by the ADC, led by former Vice President of Nigeria, Atiku Abubakar, to form a mega coalition. Sources in the presidency reportedly just dismissed it, telling them to start preparing for 2031 instead. That tells you everything you need to know about how confident the ruling party is that 2027 is already in the bag. Now, APC officials and the newly defected governors are already openly predicting a massive victory in 2027. In Enugu, APC officials said that with Governor Peter Mbah's defection, the 2027 election will be a landslide for them. This kind of talk, this narrative of it's already over, starts to become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It discourages the opposition, demoralizes voters, and makes it seem pointless to even try to challenge the ruling party. Peter Obi, the Labour Party's presidential candidate in 2023, isn't buying the fear of a one-party state. He says no party can just capture a region because a governor defects. He insists that democracy is about persuasion, not force, and this idea of capturing a state belongs to Nigeria's military past. But others wonder if his optimism is missing just how deep this institutional capture has already gone. So the question is still there. How free and fair election can an election really be where one party controls the electoral body, the security forces, a lot of the courts, and now, through defections, almost every level of the government? The answer to that question could decide the future of democracy in Nigeria. But capturing institutions isn't just about winning future elections. It's also about getting rid of people who have already been elected without following the proper rules. And that's exactly what is happening at the local level. Now, what happens when elected officials are just removed from office? Not through a proper impeachment, not through a recall by the voters, but just by an order from a higher up. What happens when the constitution is just ignored? Across Nigeria, state governors have been systematically dissolving democratically elected local government councils. They replace them with these unconstitutional caretaker committees, unelected people who just do whatever the governor wants. This practice completely wipes out democracy at the grassroots level, the very foundation of how our government is supposed to work. The Supreme Court, in a huge judgment in July 2024, declared this practice unconstitutional. Justice Emmanuel Agim's ruling was crystal clear. The Constitution demands a multi-party system and democratic elections. A democratically elected local government is non-negotiable. The court also gave local government full financial autonomy, outlawing the system where governors control their money through joint accounts. The court said this practice had gone on for far too long and was a clear violation of the Constitution. But even with this clear ruling from the highest court in the land, multiple state governments have just kept on using these caretaker committees. Senator Abamoro called them out on this in the Senate, pointing out that the Constitution says local government must be run by an elected council. So why does this matter so much? Because these caretaker committees serve a few very anti-democratic purposes. They get rid of any opposition voices at the local level. They let the governor control all the local government money and jobs. They stop opposition parties from gaining any experience in local governance. And they make it normal for the government to act outside the Constitution. The Nigerian Civil Society Situation Room says this practice of governors turning state assemblies into their personal rubber stamps violates the Constitution, and it is an insult to democracy. So when breaking the Constitution becomes routine, when elected officials can just be removed without due process, the whole democratic system becomes shaky. If they can suspend democracy at the local government level, what's to stop them from trying it at the state or federal level? It sets a dangerous precedent. It normalizes the idea that elected officials answer to the powerful people above them, not the people who voted for them. Is democracy being dismantled from the bottom up? So why everyday Nigerians are being painted as threats for criticizing the government? Why journalists are getting arrested and opposition politicians are being harassed? Who are the real enemies of Nigeria's stability and sovereignty? And these are the questions I will attempt to answer next. What if the biggest threat to Nigeria isn't the critics on Twitter or the opposition politicians in Abuja? What if it's the foreign corporations quietly taking billions in resources, the outside actors pushing divisive stories, and the people funding insecurity who make money from all the chaos? The government sometimes treats its own citizens who criticize it as national security threats, while the actual threats to the country's sovereignty get a lot less attention. This shows a serious problem with their priorities. Take our oil contracts, for example. The deals between the NNPC and international oil companies have been criticized for completely ignoring the communities in the Niger Delta. There is not enough provision for the people who live in the land to benefit from the oil under their feet. These communities have little control over their own land and resources. The people whose land produces billions in oil revenue see almost none of the benefit, while the foreign companies and the federal government carve up the profit. It's a similar story in the solid mineral sector with a lack of transparency. Nigeria has huge mineral deposits, but the contracts are often secret and sometimes have clauses that put the nation at a disadvantage. And this isn't just a Nigerian problem. It's happening all over Africa. In the last 10 years, leaders in countries like the Democratic Republic of Congo, Guinea, Liberia, Ghana, Tanzania have all started calling out and trying to renegotiate on equal mining contracts. Then there is this narrative about Christian genocide that is being pushed in some international circles and here in Nigeria. In recent weeks, US politicians like Senator Ted Cruz have made some really serious claims about religious persecution in Nigeria. Cruz alleged that over 50,000 Christians have been killed since 2009, and that 20,000 churches and schools have been destroyed by Islamist groups. Based on that, he introduced a bill in the US Senate to label Nigeria a country of particular concern. The American talk show host Bill Maher jumped on this narrative too, claiming on his HBO show that over 100,000 Christians have been killed and 18,000 churches burned since 2009 by groups like Boko Haram. He argued it's a genocide attempt worse than conflict in other parts of the world. But here is the thing. Both the Nigerian government and the Christian Association of Nigeria have strongly rejected this story. CAN's Director of National Issues made it clear that while Christians have definitely suffered, the killings haven't been targeted at only one religion. He said in Christian-dominated states like Benue, it might look like only Christians are being killed, but this same insurgency has killed many Muslims during their early morning prayers. The attackers go into mosques, slaughter people, and kidnap them. Nigerian government officials have said that framing our security problems as a targeted war on one religion is a total misrepresentation of what is actually happening, and I agree. They point out that Boko Haram and other extremist groups have killed both Christians and Muslims, and some estimates even suggest that Muslims are the majority of victims in certain regions. The Nigerian House of Representatives rejected the genocide claims, calling it a misleading narrative. Now, getting the exact numbers is hard. The most cited figure of 52,000 Christian deaths since 2009 comes from a Nigerian NGO called Intersociety, but they also documented about 34,000 Muslim deaths in that same period. Another group, Open Doors International, documented that of the roughly 4,500 Christians killed worldwide in their latest reporting period, over 3,000 of them, that's 69%, were in Nigeria, making it the deadliest country for Christians by their count. This narrative helps some outside actors. It can be used to justify foreign security aid. It helps raise money from abroad, and it creates serious religious division that can destabilize a country. It's also worth noting that many of the American politicians pushing this story have been criticized for ignoring human rights issues elsewhere. The truth is, the terrorism, banditry, and armed groups in Nigeria are often funded by complex networks involving illegal mining, arms trafficking, and various powerful interests. Communities that demand control over their resources are sometimes labeled as threats, while the real sponsors of violence get away with it. This is where Femi Falana's point comes back in. Real sovereignty means you protect the welfare of your own citizens, even when international institutions are telling you to do something else. So why is the government so quick to use cybercrime laws against journalists exposing corruption, but seems to do less about foreign companies that might be exploiting our resources? Why are opposition politicians treated like enemies of the state, while the people funding insecurity get less attention? What's happening in Nigeria fits a pattern we are seeing across the continent. In Rwanda, the ruling party has had de facto one-party control since 1994. In Uganda, Yoweri Museveni has been in power for 39 years and got rid of presidential age limit to let him rule indefinitely. Cameroon's president Paul Biya is 92 and has been in power for 43 years. And in Tanzania, the same party has been ruling for 48 years. Now, research on this shows how it is done. You use state resources to create dominance. You manipulate the constitution. You break up the opposition. You control the election officials, and you exploit ethnic divisions. Scholars warn that while one-party dominance is rare in older democracies, it's worryingly common in Africa. Now, Nigeria isn't Rwanda or Uganda yet. We haven't fallen into full-blown one-party authoritarian youth yet, but we are getting there, I can tell you that. We still have contested elections, opposition parties still exist, and civil society still has room to operate. But we are showing all the early symptoms: mass defections that are gutting the opposition, the capture of our democratic institutions, using laws as weapons against dissent, and normalizing the violation of our own constitution. Now, the question is, can we reverse this before it's too late? The real enemies of Nigeria aren't the citizens who are demanding accountability. They are the forces, both foreign and domestic, who benefit from a Nigeria that is weak, divided, and easy to exploit. Those are the threats that we need to be focused on. Nigeria is at a crossroads. One path leads to the kind of one-party dominance we see in other African countries, where elections are just for the show and the opposition is just for decoration. The other path leads to a renewed democracy, where our institutions actually work for the people of Nigeria, not for the powerful elite. So the question isn't whether Nigeria is becoming a one-party state. The question is, will Nigerians allow it? Will civil society keep pushing back? Will journalists keep reporting despite the risk? Will ordinary citizens refuse to believe this story that it's already a done deal? Will the young Nigerians who see right through this facade get organized and mobilized for 2027? These are the questions that will decide whether Nigeria's democracy survives or whether it becomes another country where you have multiple parties on paper but one party rule in reality. The defections will continue. The pressure will get worse, but history shows us that no amount of institutional capture can hold down a determined people forever. From the June 12 struggle to end SARS, Nigerians have shown time and time again that when push comes too far, they will push back. The question isn't if resistance will come. The question is whether it will come in time. Now, if you have watched to this point, this is Frontline Africa. This is where we talk about geopolitics from Africa's own point of view. This is where we bring you the kind of stories with the kind of details mainstream media does everything to avoid. Now, in this particular episode, I am bringing it home. Nigeria is my home country, and I talk about every other country in Africa, and I bring in the details. So I will not hesitate and shy away from saying it the way it needs to be said. I know there are risks. I've already talked about the risk of being a journalist in Nigeria. I know there are risks, but what needs to be said needs to be said. And I want to pose these questions to my fellow Nigerians. We are all seeing this thing play out like a movie. Every governor, every senator, every lawmaker that have defected is a blow to the opposition in Nigeria. We are going to laugh about it and make fun of it and make joke because that's what we do in this country. Make joke of everything. But this is a serious matter. Should APC succeed in becoming a de facto one-party state, there will be no place for anyone else except you are in APC. That is how it's going to work. But it doesn't have to be so. It doesn't have to be so. Nigerians, regardless of the risk of speaking out, it's time we start speaking out and calling it out exactly how it is. We are sliding into a one-party state. So go to the comment section and drop your opinion. How can we counter this? How can we make sure this doesn't get cemented as a law? Because there is no level, there is no length these people cannot go. They can even go as far as making it a law, declaring Nigeria a one-party state. They already have the majority in the Senate to make it happen. So we are at their mercy right now. We are at their mercy right now. If they want to make it a law, they can make it a law. They've made a lot of laws that there was no opposition to it, like the cybercrime law, that the various taxes will soon start paying in 2026. So these are the issues. Tell us your opinion in the comment section. And if you want to see more of my videos, maybe consider to subscribe and turn on those notifications. I am your host, Ezekiel Enejeta, and I will see you in the next one. It's a bye-bye for now.